Watch right now on the Front News Project. The elimination of Russian missile operators who launch rockets at Kyiv, exclusive details. Putin is preparing a new offensive on Odessa. The Ukrainian armed forces are ready to meet uninvited guests. Russian army exercises in Belarus. Is this really preparation for a new assault on Kyiv? Fiery, intense, and blazing footage from the front lines. Watch right now. It's the fourth year of the full-scale war that Putin's Russia started on Ukrainian soil. The armed forces of Ukraine continue to heroically defend not only their homeland, but the entire civilized world from the aggression of Kremlin war criminals. Welcome! This is Front News with you, Volodymyr Tymoshenko. In the next 30 minutes, you'll get the truth about the war, which our journalists obtain from the hottest combat zones. So, are you ready? Then let's begin. And we'll start right away with exclusive material. The front line. The Russians continue to try to advance their meter by meter, sending thousands of their expendable soldiers to their death. But here's the problem. Russian war correspondents are already shouting that Ukrainian defenders have surrounded several Russian units at once in the Kursk region. And President Zelensky announced that in Russia's Bryansk region, the Ukrainian armed forces struck 3 Iskander-M complexes, which had been shelling, among other places, Kyiv. And most importantly, the names of 14 Russian missile operators who were eliminated by Ukrainian defense forces have become known. Among them are high-ranking officers. All the details are in the exclusive report by TSN Week's military correspondent Andriy Tsaplenko.
This is the commander of the Iskander division, Lieutenant Colonel Oleg Podozerov. The Russian officer tenderly poses with his daughter, while at the same time cold-bloodedly launches missiles at Ukrainian children. Or rather, he used to launch them. Yes, during an attempt to shell Kyiv on June 5, an Iskander-M launcher was destroyed. And along with the missiles, 14 killers who launched them were eliminated. Half of those on the list of those eliminated officers. Among them was Lieutenant Colonel Podozerov. The launcher that was destroyed by HIMARS had been deployed 40 kilometers from the border in the Bryansk region. The missile operators surely thought they were out of reach, but the impunity of war criminals has come to an end.
And to wage war coffin. I believe the war needs to be brought onto their territory. After all, they keep pushing forward. We need to go in there and break up their groups.
Radik and his comrades from the Eri Battalion are fighting right here, in Tetkino, a large settlement in the Kursk region. Ukrainian forces entered Tetkino several weeks ago. The fighting is ongoing practically in the center of the settlement.
They're spreading it on their local public forums. Even their local forums and military are spreading the word that Tetkino is surrounded, that our soldiers are there, and so on. This, along with all the other events happening now on the other side of the border, is having quite a positive effect on the overall situation. Among other things, they have to pull in units here that weren't stationed in this area and that could have been sent to other directions to support offensive operations, but instead they are forced to bring them here.
The Russians are clinging to the industrial zone of Tetkino. Infantrymen are attacking the enemy, engaging the Russians in close quarters combat. Ukrainian aviation is destroying enemy drone control points with precision-guided bombs. Our forces have secured positions in Tetkino, including part of the Ukrainian Volunteer Army's Ray Battalion.
This is a strategically important site. Before we entered this village, they used 209 KABs against us over 4 days and still couldn't drive us out. They started deploying the Skov special forces against us.
Ray's assault troops broke through to the railway bridge, and in another area, several brave Ukrainians captured a large group of Russians.
There were 9 prisoners in total, not 11 as reported, and 2 of them were not brought out. Because when we were already escorting the prisoners out, they noticed that we were carrying them out in our arms, since their hands were tied. And then in Piva, they started finishing them off too, didn't survive because they were killed. Among them was 1 officer, and there were also members of the special forces. The task was to eliminate them before they could pass on any information. When the Ukrainian servicemen were escorting us out, to their own territory of course, Panama was working actively, our own artillery too. They were covering us with drones. I don't know whether it was German drones or not, but it was something serious. a heavy explosion.
But they did manage to get the officer out without a scratch. Here he is, together with his subordinates, fattening up on Ukrainian salo.
It's tasty. You know, when it's fried well, I wrote about that.
The Russian officer is still surprised by the ingenuity of the Ukrainians who, pretending to be Russians, captured the special forces soldiers.
The group approached us. There were 5 people. What misled us was that we thought they were wrong. That's it. And that's how we ended up being taken prisoner.
Intelligence seems to be the only resource Ukrainians have in abundance. Where our soldiers act more cleverly than the enemy, the situation remains under control. A separate battalion of unmanned systems was recently established in the 10th Mountain Assault Brigade Edelweiss. Given the new conditions that have developed on this section of the front, this is simply a necessity.
Direct firefights are very valuable.
These are not direct firefights, which, well, probably haven't happened for more than a year and a half now. Now, out of every 10 Russians killed, 9 are killed precisely by unmanned systems.
The brigade has been holding the defense near Siversk for the 2nd year. For several weeks in a row, the Russians have been trying to encircle the city.
They are doing everything to cut off our logistics first and foremost, and of course to strike at the pilots' positions. These are their priority targets right now. Of course, for our part, we have to take certain measures, build backup positions and lines of defense so we can change the locations we operate from.
This is one of those positions. The occupiers wouldn't hesitate to use even Iskanders on it if they find it. And here they fend off drones with a shotgun.
Enemy FPV kamikaze drones reach here. We don't trust electronic warfare. We only trust the shotgun.
From here, we also use FPV drones against the enemy, but special ones.
A simple solution for folding tasks.
A simple solution for complex tasks. Darts is a kind of FPV only with wings. It is used in particular to destroy enemy guns, in other words, for so-called counter-battery warfare. It serves as a replacement for Ukrainian long-range artillery guns. But just imagine, this entire bird costs 5 times less than a single artillery shell. Despite its primitive appearance, serious engineers worked on this drone. They created a cheap but effective weapon.
The wings are made of foam, the body itself is made of plywood.
They use a tandem charge against enemy equipment.
The shaped charge jet can penetrate any target up to about 10 meters.
A few warn words for the enemy are written on the wings and the dart takes to the sky. It can cover up to 50 kilometers, and if it locks onto a target, electronic warfare can no longer stop it. Exactly what is needed in the Sivershina region.
Within a radius of 35 kilometers, I can't even remember the last time I saw any heavy equipment or a tank. We focus on logistics, on the movement of any heavy equipment that is likely being prepared for future assaults.
Here, in the dart sights, is an enemy armored vehicle, the final phase of the flight, and the drones automatically lock onto the target. The crew of the armored vehicle understood everything and scattered just seconds before the dart turned it into a firework. Ammunition for the dart is prepared here in an underground workshop that serves the entire battalion of unmanned systems.
A cumulative warhead with a shaped charge effect.
Today, winged FPVs are effective. Tomorrow, they might lose all relevance. The drone laboratory in the Unmanned Systems Battalion is forced to respond to changes much faster than the manufacturers of wings or quadcopters.
Nothing can be universal. The Russians also always want to counter us. They find ways to jam us, they figure out how we control things. So, it works for a while. In 2 or 3 months it will no longer work, so we have to come up with something new again.
The new thing doesn't necessarily have to fly. This is the area around the village of Dvorichne in the Kharkiv region. Here, the 8th Battalion of the 10th Mountain Assault Brigade is holding the defense. The enemy has crossed to the right bank of the Oskil River and captured part of Dvorichne. They are trying to establish a bridgehead, and from that bridgehead begin the encirclement of Kupiansk. Are they making any advances or not? Has the line stopped moving?
No, the line has stopped. The guys are holding their positions both in the village and around it.
Delivering food, ammunition and medical supplies to the defenders of Dvorichne is extremely dangerous. The crew of this pickup miraculously survived after hitting a shaped charge.
The main thing is that everyone is alive.
The drone looks like a kind of multi-tool on tracks. It delivers cargo, evacuates the dead and wounded, sets up barriers and can even lay mines. There is a separate module for each task.
We drive the little small vehicle.
We drive the vehicle and set up minefields. So neither sappers nor engineers have to go out to the front line.
Here we
handle logistics, heavy netting, water, provisions. They're unloading now.
How far can you actually travel right now, at this moment?
There and back 10 kilometers. It's practically a drone war now, both aerial and ground drones. First and foremost, it's about saving lives.
A robot saves the life of an infantryman, but it can't replace him. Wars are won by people. Ukraine holds its ground where the infantry stands.
Now let's move to the Lyman and Kupiansk directions of the front. The Russian world continues to destroy, kill, and maim here as well. In the Kupiansk direction, since the beginning of the day, the enemy has advanced 6 times towards the positions of our defenders near the settlement of Stepnaya Novoselka and in the direction of Peshanoi. In the Lyman direction, there have been 11 clashes today, 3 of which are still ongoing. The enemy attacked in the areas of the settlements of Nadia, Karpovka, Belogorovka, and towards the settlements of Olgovka, Stepnoye, Grekovka, Andreevka, Zelenaya Dolina, and Torsko. Meanwhile, the battered Ukrainian city of Kharkiv has endured yet another hellish week. Most recently, 11 people remain in Kharkiv hospitals after the overnight shelling. Russia attacked the city with 17 shahed drones. 3 people were killed, dozens were injured, including children. Apartment buildings, a trolleybus depot, and businesses were all hit. TSN correspondent Yulia Boyko will tell and show how the city survived that hellish night.
This is the Slobitsky district of the city. It was here that a Russian Geron drone triggered a massive fire. The flames instantly engulfed the apartment building. Several floors were burning at once, from the 3rd to the 5th. People ran out of their apartments in whatever they were sleeping in. Several apartments in this building are completely destroyed. The neighboring apartment buildings were also hit by the blast wave. Windows were blown out there, facades were scarred, and balconies were destroyed.
At first, I was
in my room, I heard the sound of a shahed drone, immediately grabbed my child and we went into the hallway. We were very scared because there were so many of them. As soon as it hit, panic broke out. We didn't know what to do, where to run, because there was still more flying overhead.
Everything went flying.
all the furniture, windows, everything was blown away. My mother was in the hallway and my disabled father was lying down. Everyone is alive.
At first, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the 5th one hit us.
That night, at least 60 people were injured, including 3 children. 2 of them, aged 13 and 15, are in the hospital in moderate condition.
7 people were admitted to our hospital's department. These are shrapnel wounds of varying depth and severity. Mostly, as far as I understand, the injuries were caused by glass. At the moment, the condition of all patients is relatively satisfactory.
Debris and traces of strikes were found at 9 locations in the city. 3 apartment buildings, private houses, playgrounds and businesses were hit.
There are no windows.
There are no windows anywhere, not in the kitchen, not in the rooms. There is nothing left. All the doors are open. The table, the refrigerator, only the floor remains.
All of this was torn out.
My apartment in Izium was blown away. Now I was renting an apartment here, and it's destroyed too.
For the second time in half a month, the occupiers struck the trolleybus depot. Vehicles that were being repaired were damaged, industrial buildings and service stations caught fire. A hair salon was also affected, but people still came to work.
Everything was shattered. Doors, windows, all of ours were twisted. We cleaned everything up, people are coming, we're waiting. So we're accepting clients and continuing to work as usual.
At night, it wasn't just people who needed help. In the courtyard of an apartment building, a dog was injured. The explosion damaged its eye. The frightened dog still allowed rescuers to approach. Little Lozi. It is already known, at night, Russia launched 17 Geran to attack drones at Kharkiv in less than 10 minutes.
Work to eliminate the consequences is still ongoing at the site. There may be people under this rubble. The enemy targeted exclusively civilian enterprises. These are businesses, residential buildings and sleeping districts. As a result of these attacks, a huge number of civilians are indeed suffering.
Meanwhile, the search operation continues at the enterprise that was attacked by the Russians on the night of June 7th. Rescuers have found the body of another victim there. Work to free the body is still ongoing. According to the prosecutor's office, there may be the bodies of 4 more people under the rubble.
And now it's time to analyze the current situation on the Kramatorsk front. The enemy is becoming more aggressive here as well. On the Kramatorsk front, our defenders repelled 2 enemy attacks. The enemy carried out offensive actions, trying to advance towards Tupochki and Bilaora. Another clash is still ongoing. Meanwhile, terrorist Russia is planning to capture Odessa and reach the border with Moldova and Romania. Do the Russians, God forbid, have the resources and strength to carry out their criminal plans? We'll talk about that in just a minute. In addition, under the guise of exercises in Belarus, the Russian Federation may launch an offensive on the Kyiv, Volyn, Zhytomyr, Rivne and Chernihiv regions. This was stated by the deputy commander of the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade, Maxim Zhorin. More on the new strategic plans of Putin's war criminals in our next report.
Putin's occupiers are preparing for a new assault on Kyiv. Russian troops may launch a new offensive operation on the capital using the large-scale Zapad 2025 exercises, which are to be held in Belarus, as cover. Lieutenant Colonel Maxim Zhorin, deputy commander of the legendary 3rd Separate Assault Brigade, does not rule out such a scenario. But a decision on a possible offensive by the Russians has not yet been made.
It's unlikely they would push through the Chernobyl zone. A strike from the direction of Zhytomyr, Rivne, and so on is also unlikely, but cannot be ruled out. Do they have the forces for this? I'm not sure, considering that right now they're redeploying divisions and units from the Sumy direction to Zaporizhia, and vice versa.
And Russia also wants to take control of Odessa. After that, the enemy plans to reach the border with Romania and Moldova, according to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
They plan to take Odessa in 2 ways, if you remember. An amphibious operation was planned, but that fell apart when our armed forces sank and damaged all the landing ships they had. They were based in Berdyansk and in Crimea. The remaining ships retreated to Novorossiysk. As for a breakthrough by land, in order to take Odessa, they would have to take Kherson again, cross the Dnipro, and go through Mykolaiv.
But for now, these are just possible scenarios. The occupiers have some real achievements. Their total losses in the war have exceeded 1 million personnel. Now, that's a significant anniversary for Russia Day.
So what, are we supposed to just roll out a red carpet for them or something? Of course not.
And here are some more little gifts that have arrived. Agents of the partisan movement Atesh carried out a successful sabotage operation in temporarily occupied Melitopol. While sending their regards to the occupiers, one of the partisans set fire to a military Ural truck. As a result, several invaders from the duty shift will remain forever in the fields of Zaporizhia. And in addition, Ukraine's defense forces struck an electronics factory near Moscow that produces components for Russian weaponry. And while things are burning near Moscow, the Kremlin's master, Putin, has ordered his military command to multiply the combat capabilities of Russia's ground forces several times over and to coordinate the work of the military-industrial complex with the economy's mobilization plans.
What does it mean to multiply combat capabilities several times over? Tanks, as the main strike force, have already ceased to be the primary offensive weapon in the era of constant drone attacks. Aviation, well, we're fighting it quite successfully as well. As for the ground forces, they've been reduced to launching attacks in Zhiguli cars and on motorcycles.
Putin also demanded that bases, arsenals and airfields for new weapon systems be prepared in advance so that they aren't just set up in open fields.
It's necessary to calculate the needs ahead of time and begin preparing the infrastructure for deploying new weapon systems, including bases, arsenals, airfields, and so on. The financial resources required for the construction and modernization of such facilities must be allocated as a separate line in the program.
And of course, the Kremlin dictator once again boasted about his nuclear arsenal, claiming that it is the most advanced in the world.
Currently, the share of modern weapons and equipment in the strategic nuclear forces is already 95%. This is a good figure, but in fact it is the highest among all the world's nuclear powers, the highest figure.
Here, judging by the numerous tests of the same Bulava, the same Yars, which have not always been successful, not everything is as great as they claim, thank God. And it's one thing to announce the adoption of some new unit or a new type of weapon, but it's quite another to actually put them on combat duty. That is, they definitely have both silo-based and mobile Tupolev and Yars systems. How modern they are and how much they differ from developments dating back to Soviet times is hard to say.
But the occupiers did manage to modernize their drones. Russia has likely used the new Geran 3 missile UAV during the attack on Kyiv.
Essentially, it's the same Shahed but with a jet engine. Talks about its appearance have been going on since 2024, if I remember correctly. Remnants of a small turbojet engine were found after a Shahed or Geran 3 was shot down. Photos of this turbojet engine are already circulating online. It's no secret. There's nothing surprising about this either. They're deploying new types of weapons, trying to increase the speed of their strike drones to make it harder for our air defense forces to intercept them.
Meanwhile, Israel has informed the United States of its readiness to launch a military operation in Iran. At the same time, it is noted that Washington expects Iran may retaliate by striking certain American targets in neighboring Iraq. And since we've already started talking about the Ukrainian Pearl by the Sea, how can we not mention this terrible event? The Russians attacked the territory of the world-famous Odessa film studio with 2 drones at once. As a result of the explosion, a warehouse with costumes and props was damaged, production facilities were destroyed, and part of the sets, equipment, and apparatus were wiped out. Because the drones were equipped with high explosive fragmentation warheads, there was destruction and a fire, which the film studio workers themselves extinguished at the risk of their lives. Our correspondent Serhiy Sachuk will tell us more about the aftermath of the attack.
They are recovering from the strikes, trying to restore order in the affected areas and calculating the damage. The film studio workers are showing how much damage the Russian drones have caused. The filming set is covered in soot, and nearby stands a destroyed summer house, a prop from a Dovzhenko film. Just a few days ago it looked like this. The set was bustling with activity, but at night, because of the strikes, a fire broke out here.
The security guards weren't scared, they came and contained the fire, and thanks to that, significant damage was prevented. I also believe that Heavenly Forces are protecting the Odessa film studio, because if those Shaheds had flown just 5 meters further, right here where the strike hit, we would have been putting out a fire in our costume and props warehouse for an entire month, since there are very valuable items there. There are more than 60,000 items of costumes and props there which have been collected over 100 years.
In the rooms where these unique costumes and props are kept, not a single window survived. Shrapnel from the warhead damaged the filming equipment and vehicles. This vintage Rolls-Royce was just recently restored. Now it stands without glass. The Odessa film studio has been attacked, but it is still alive, say its employees, both current and former, who come to help. The studio is being supported from abroad with promises of financial assistance for restoration.
For me, for us.
For me, for us, for my entire team, the destruction at the film studio is terrible because we are just now shooting a short film called Distant Consequences. Right now we've moved on to editing, to the color grading stage, and there's still equipment at the film studio. Both of these things, of course, made me rush over in the morning to see what had happened. We are very worried. The Russians, who used to shoot films and TV series here before 2014, are now being called barbarians.
You know what it's like? It's like, if I can't have you, no one can. That's exactly what's happening here. We'll leave our mark, and we'll take this from you as well. How many film studios do we even have left? The Yalta studio is already gone. Now we only have Odessa and Kyiv, and they want to take those too.
What can you expect from the Russians? It's a culture hostile to us, a hostile state, and that's how it will always be. They have neither culture, nor conscience, nor military honor. To strike a civilian target, barbarians, in a word.
The fact that so many people responded to the misfortune of the film studio, says the head of the state film agency, is inspiring not only to restore it, but to make it even better. That's why the studio has already started calculating the losses and saving what survived.
Now let's analyze the situation on the Pokrovsk front. Let's be honest, this is yet another sacred objective for Putin and his entire pack. Accordingly, the situation here is also extremely tense. On the Pokrovsk front, the enemy initiated clashes of varying intensity 33 times in the areas of the settlements of Poltavka, Malinovka, Marolyubivka, Lisovka, Zverevo, Kotlino, Udachne, Muravka, Novokrainka, and Alexievka. Our defenders repelled 31 enemy attacks. The fighting continues. The enemy also carried out airstrikes on the areas of Poltavka and Koptevo. A Kursk scenario is unfolding on the Pokrovsk front. The occupiers are trying to disrupt Ukrainian logistics with their drones, using loitering munitions even against infantry, and shelling frontline roads as well as both civilian and military vehicles. To control the access routes to the front line, the Russians have brought their special unit Orion to the Pokrovsk direction. This is the very unit that, let's say, operated in the Kursk region. How dangerous is this? And how are Ukrainian defenders countering the aggressors in this section of the front? Our special correspondent for TSN, Yulia Kirienko, will tell us more.
At a heading of 210, the FPV drones quickly flew past the houses. They didn't have time to fire back.
There are more. The Russians from the Kursk region have brought in a unit called Rubicon. These are certain pro-Russian unmanned systems forces that operate deep behind our lines, particularly using drones. Right now, we can't go out to our position because these Russian pilots are out hunting. Several FPV drones have flown very far from the front line, deep into the rear toward Dobropilia.
There's an FPV coming from Rodinska in our direction. Tell Sanya to stand by with the rifle.
This Rubicon unit has disrupted our troops' logistics in the Kursk region. Now they're doing the same thing in Pokrovsk. Even though we're in an armored Humvee, it already has marks from enemy drone strikes.
It hit on the left side and damaged the wheel on the right.
We're finally heading out. The drone didn't notice us and flew on. We need to reach the soldiers while there's still a corridor in the temporarily clear sky. The heavy American Humvee and its driver are giving it their all, not even slowing down on the turns. The drone's cannon was aimed in detail. And here the commander is trying to save 3 of our infantrymen from an enemy FPV drone. The Russian UAV has already dropped munitions on our position. It caught fire. The commander is urgently moving soldiers to a backup position.
Go, 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 go. Down, straight down, go down.
The battalion commander gives instructions to the pilot, who is guiding the soldiers via radio. Everyone is nervous because they are responsible for those 3 lives on the screen.
Tell them there's a body lying there. There's a Russian lying there, let them jump in there quickly. They need to go now. Now when they come down, by the time they come down, it'll be too late. They are visible?
The soldiers have a few minutes to jump into cover, because just like our pilot can see them, so can the Russian, and the enemy will open fire.
Come on, come on, come on, tell them to jump in faster already. Berlin, just tell them as clearly as possible to get in faster. They can rest once they're inside.
Finally, the fighters are entering the position. Now it will be harder for the Russian drone to get them. All units of the 25 Airborne breathe a sigh of relief.
Tell them to keep a lower profile so he doesn't see them, and to move further in and drop down there. At this moment, they are our most important resource. No matter how it sounds calling them a resource, but that's what they are. It's not that they're working for us, we're working for the soldiers. That's why we have to do everything possible to keep the enemy from reaching them. And if the enemy does get close, everything available in the battalion must be used to destroy them.
All these events are taking place south of Pokrovsk. For a year now, the soldiers of the 25 have been holding the defense there and still haven't let the enemy into the city. This battalion also pushed the occupiers out of the village of Kotlino, which opened up advantageous positions for us.
The units responsible for this sector are already a bit worn out. And as for the enemy, they're no fools either. They understand that it's no longer reasonable to push through head-on. Heavy losses. It's simple math. They counted how many they've lost, and now they're advancing side by side.
Just in May, the paratroopers destroyed 300 occupiers near Pokrovsk. That's why the Russians decided not to launch frontal infantry assaults, but to use the Kursk tactic drone strikes deep into the territory to disrupt logistics and take control of the roads leading to our positions. And for now, they have more than enough of these drones.
Now, let's analyze the situation on the Huliaipol and Kharkiv fronts. The enemy army's bloody rampage continues here as well. On the Huliaipol front, there are 4 clashes taking place near Malinivka. One attack by the invaders has already been repelled. On the Kharkiv front today, the enemy tried to advance toward Pavlivka but was stopped by our defenders. Meanwhile, Kyiv is recovering from yet another missile and drone strike. The enemy attacked the capital on the night of Tuesday, June 10th. A woman was killed. She lived in a high-rise building in the Obolon district, which suffered the most destruction. 2 of the injured are still in the hospital, while 4 others received outpatient care. TSN journalist Alina Lisova will tell and show how the consequences of the enemy strikes are being dealt with in the capital.
The facade is shattered, windows are blown out, and balconies have been destroyed. For the second day in a row, efforts are underway in Kyiv's Obolon district to eliminate the aftermath of the enemy attack. At the moment, utility workers are on site. They are trying to sweep up all the construction debris and shards of glass that are still lying in the building's courtyard. Allah is a resident of the damaged high-rise. Her apartment on the 2nd floor was in the impact zone of the enemy drone. On the night leading into Tuesday, when Russia launched a massive attack on the capital, she was at her dacha, so fortunately she was not harmed. We are in Luchina. There, do you see the hole?
A direct hit. There you see a hole, a chunk of concrete, and you can see that the blast wave knocked out the floor slab on the 3rd floor. All of that started to fall and burn. Basically, the fire was extinguished. Of course, they had to clear it out. You can imagine it was almost up to the height of a person. And thanks to the fact that there was no fire, the apartment for the most part survived. The volunteers did their job, there was help with food, water, and they even provided plastic sheeting.
There are still wrecked cars in the courtyard of the residential complex. At the moment, their owners are trying to remove them so they don't get in the way of the utility workers.
It was practically at the epicenter, practically at the very center of the explosion, so its condition is such that I'm just planning to scrap it. That's all.
Sviatoslav is trying to take away not just 1 but 2 Karshis and his wife's most likely just for scrap metal. His family lives in the building next door. The apartment wasn't damaged, but he says the powerful explosions really frightened the little children.
The alarm started. As always, we moved the kids to the middle room, the one without windows. There was 1 explosion, then a second, then a third.
In total, 18 apartments in the high-rise building were damaged. The pharmacy on the 1st floor was also completely destroyed. At the moment, residents have covered the partially damaged apartments with plastic sheeting and are also trying to recover, since for the most part they got away with just the fright. Fortunately, there were no fatalities in this building.
That's all for today, but very soon Front News will bring you new, unique reports from our journalists in the hottest spots of the war, obtained so that you know the truth. This was Vladimir Timoshenko with you. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones.